everyone, and welcome to Clay Formations. Ever since I was a boy, the sea and all the creatures in it has absolutely fascinated me. The creature that still intrigues me the most is the humpback whale. Their massive size and incredible power is tempered only by their gentle grace as they swim through the sea. I've seen them from a distance, but my ultimate dream is to see one up close. Well, maybe someday. But for now, I'll have to settle with creating a humpback whale in my studio, something that I've always wanted to do. The first thing I'll do is take my adjustable microphone gooseneck and bend it into a preliminary shape that I want the whale to be. Then I'll take some wooden eggs that I'm going to be bulking out the body with and see how they look up against that action line. That's a pretty nice action line. Believe me, it's a lot easier bending this at first than trying to bend something like this. I drilled some holes into the wooden eggs and we'll slide it through the bar. And then what I'll try to do is match this particular line with this right here. Now, using my superhuman weakling strength, I'll bend the... Oh, I'll have to use my knee. There we go. Now it's bent. Now I need to bend it some more. Now to do the tail. Man, I can't seem... Where's my pliers? I need my pliers. That's it. Now I can bend that sucker. Oh, gosh. Okay, looks like I got it a little bit, but I still need a swoop on that tail, so I'll be right back. Sometimes all you need is a garage and a vise in order to bend some heavy metal. I'm going to cut it off about right there. But to make sure the measurement is accurate, I'm going to use my clay rolling pin here to get the exact size, because this rolling pin fits in my oven, and if I don't make it any longer than the rolling pin, it'll fit. That way I can get the whole sculpture in the oven and not have to do it in pieces. Now I'll put the armature into the drill chuck and I will tack on the wooden eggs with super glue. And of course we know that super glue is not strong enough to hold anything, so we will take some epoxy sculpt and attach the wooden eggs to the bar. Now that everything's secure, we'll take some aluminum foil and we'll bulk out the rest of the armature. Okay, I've gone as far as I can here, so I drilled a hole in the middle, and I'm going to use some aluminum wire so I can affix it to the center and work on it the rest of the way from the middle. To keep the aluminum foil from moving, I'm going to affix it with some tape. And you don't have to worry about the tape affecting your oven or affecting the clay. What it'll do is keep everything nice and secure and compact. Watching this now, I wish I would have used a little more aluminum foil to bulk her out. But for those of you who have been with me for a while already know that I have trouble with either making the armature too small or too big. Now to permanently affix the aluminum rod to the whale, I'm using super glue and baking powder and epoxy sculpt, because while I'm sculpting, I do not want that thing to come loose. Okay, here's an issue that pops up. The blue tape does not stick very well, so what you have to do is you have to take a complete roll of blue tape or whatever tape you want to use and wrap it in one piece all the way around like a mummy. That'll keep the doggone tape from coming loose while you're trying to work on your sculpture. Now that the armature is complete, now we can get on to preparing our clay. When working on a sculpture this big, you have to prepare and condition your clay, and this piece is going to take a lot of clay. I didn't want to have to stop and recondition more clay if I ran out, so I decided I'm going to go all out and I'm going to use every single bit of clay that I possibly can. What I didn't realize is this was going to take 2 full blocks of polymer clay. It was incredible. So what I do is I take pieces of clay, I put it in the middle, and then I flatten it out, and I just keep adding pieces of clay to the already flattened clay. It spreads it out. See, right now I'm putting 3 on. And then I'll flatten that out, and then I'll turn it over, reflatten it out again. After that, what I'll do is I will take the cutters and I'll clean up the edges, like that. And then I have a nice flat square piece of clay to add to the armature. And after much sweating, sore palms, sore wrists, and sore forearms, you finally end up with all your clay conditioned and ready to go. And always remember, whatever you don't use, you can always use on your next sculpture, so nothing is ever a waste of time. Now we will apply some liquid Sculpey to the armature so that the clay has something to adhere to reduce bubbles and cracking. Yeah, cracking. Yeah, I'll tell you about that in a little while. Let's go ahead and add all the clay that we've conditioned onto the armature. I'm not going to worry too much about blending it in just yet. I'm really just putting all the pieces on, making sure everything is covered, and I'll blend it in a little bit later. Other than making sure everything is covered all over the piece, my main focus here is to make sure that there is a good seal between the clay and the armature. I don't want to leave any air gaps or air bubbles between the armature and the clay because that could cause a problem for you later on. I just want to make sure that there's that really good seal. The only thing that you have to get past is that it kind of looks like a jigsaw puzzle before you blend it all in. And believe it or not, this is really satisfying. The reality of it is this is the easiest part of the sculpture. You don't have to worry about details. You're just putting it all together, and there's something really satisfying about that. Now I'm going to start blending all the clay together, and guys, I've got to tell you about this batch of clay that I found. Remember my earlier video, Snazzy Spirit, where the clay just was terrible? Remember how it was crumbling and it wouldn't blend? This clay was like butter. I'm not kidding. I got really lucky finding this clay because it was just smooth as silk. It blended well. Look at that. Look at how it just blended in there. It was absolutely a joy to work with this batch of clay. You don't always get good ones like this. These are very rare. So I really enjoyed blending all this together because it was so smooth and easy to work with. Now that I have the piece entirely covered in clay and blended in together, what I'll do is begin to add in the secondary blocking, which is the jaw, the humpback, and the dorsal fin, and just begin to create the entire silhouette of the whale body. Smoothing out under her throat, or the ventral area. Now this part here is called the chin or the rostrum. I think that's probably something that helps them glide through the water better, like a boat rudder or something like that. Now I'll smooth out the hump and add her dorsal fin. Checking it all out as I go, making sure everything's lining up correctly. And now for my favorite part, and I hope yours too, scraping everything down and smoothing the entire body out with the rake tool. I really enjoy this. The basic shape and the silhouette is really coming out well. I wanted the whale to be as accurate as possible. I didn't want it to be an exact duplicate, but at least as realistic as I possibly could get it. And guys, I could not wait to share this with you. These are stripping pads that I got from Home Depot. I've used them on Chavant clay. I really wasn't sure if I could use it on polymer clay. I thought, what the heck, I'd give it a try. And you guys, these things are amazing. If you ever wish that you could just find something to use on your sculpture that works like sandpaper, this stuff is it. Now I'll go ahead and mark where the mouth line will be. Now this footage is sped up right here. Now you might find this interesting. This is real time. This is actually how long it takes me to create the actual line. I'll show you some more parts in real time, but right now we have to move on to the eyes. We'll put a couple of clay nodes just above the jawline and we'll add steel balls for the eyes. Checking out the symmetry. And then after we've checked the eye symmetry, we'll go ahead and blend the eyes into the body. Now we'll add her blowhole. That always sounds so weird, blowhole. It sounds so undignified for a humpback whale. Yeah, it's a humpback whale's blowhole. I will say this though, a human nose is infinitely easier than making a whale's blowhole. This thing was really difficult to get right, and if I had to choose between the two, I'd much rather make a human nose. But in the words of North of the Border, I worked on it till it was good enough. Now that all that is completed, I have to make the nodes that are on the top of the head and the side. I knew I wouldn't be able to use the nodes uncured because they would just get messed up as I was working on them. So what I decided to do was go ahead and make little round balls and then bake them. So let's go off and bake some humpback whale nodes. Now while the nodes are baking, that'll give us a chance to redefine the mouth line and add a little bit more clay to the jaws because they were a little bit thin right around the eye area. Humpback whales really have a unique anatomy. And I have to tell you one more time, these stripping pads were an absolute godsend. It really made it so easy to blend everything together. Alright, that's looking pretty good so far. Still a little bit thin under the eyes, so I'll add some more clay there. The eyes almost went directly from the eye all the way into the hinge of the jaw, and it was a real challenge to get that correct. The other challenging part of this is what order to do everything. For example, what I'm doing now is I'm getting the eye to a point right before I add the details because I wanted to add the nodes next, and then once the nodes were done, I would move on to the eyes, because if I tried to put the detail on the eyes before I did the nodes, it was inevitable that my thumb or finger would have smashed into the eye and messed up all my work, and I really hate it when that happens. Looks like I need to add a little bit more to the top of her eye. Now on the other side, we'll add a little more to the top of her eye. And it looks as though I'm needing to add a lot more. Now it looks like we're ready. I'll start by defining the upper and lower lids. Then we'll do the same thing on the other side. I have to do this in order to make sure that they're symmetrical. I can't just do all the detail on one side and then go to the other side and do the same thing. I have to keep going back and forth in order to make sure that they look the same. Now we'll start adding all the details to her eyes. Whales have such soulful eyes. I don't know what it is. It's kind of like a ancient wisdom, but yet there's a sadness behind it. I don't know why. Maybe someday in the future we'll find out what they're trying to express to us, but for now we'll just have to wonder. And now that her eyes are complete, I can go ahead and finish the rest of the nodes. If you look on the roof of her mouth, you'll see that those nodes are completed. I went ahead and finished them, and I decided that I will show you how I blended the nodes into her body on this part of the video. So I go ahead and I add them all in. Then I took some thin strips of rolled out clay and wrapped each node with it. Then after I wrapped them all around the nodes, I went ahead and I started to blend them in. When I was blending them in, I started with a very small ball stylus, worked up to larger ball styluses. Then I used the stripping pads and the paintbrush to do the final blending, and I would highly recommend using pre-baked nodes to do this because it makes it a lot easier. Okay, now for the part that I've been dreading, the ventral pleats. And what I'm showing you now as I'm going down each ventral pleat, this is sped up by about 75%, but I'm going to show you real time right now. This is actually how long it took me to go from the tip of her mouth all the way to her belly, and I had to do it with each ventral pleat. And now we're back to sped up time. So I'm kind of glad that we are able to speed up the footage, because I think these videos would be like 2 days long. So now we'll line out all the rest of the ventral pleats, and then we can get on with the refinements. The ventral pleats have to look rounded, so what I do is I scrape off that rough edges, and then I blend them in with the stripping pads and blend them in with paint brushes, smoothing them out with the loop tool, and they ended up looking pretty accurate. I was pleased with the results that I got. By the way, if you guys are still here, I really appreciate it. We got a few more things to do before this thing is finished, but I promise you the end results will be worth it. Hope you stick around till then. Here's a better look at the refinement process. I start by taking away the rough edge with the loop tool, then brushing it out with a stripping pad, using the loop tool to smooth it out a little bit more, taking more of the edges off, stripping pad, and then the paintbrush. And there you go. A complete set of humpback whale ventral pleats. But we can't stop there. A humpback whale can't swim without her fins. So we'll go ahead and mark those positions, and then we'll measure out approximately how big they'll be. Now I'll draw and cut out a pattern for the fins. And right now I'm just going by the skin of my teeth. I'm just hoping that these things are the right size. Here's the second one. After I cut out the second one, I realized that I would need 4 because one would have to be smaller than the real size. That one is smaller than the original size. That's the one we'll use for the armature. Since I wasn't sure how the polymer clay would react to the black cardstock, I decided to cover them in aluminum foil and then wrap tape around them, just to be on the safe side. I'm probably overthinking it, but when do I not overthink things? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of aluminum wire and place them inside the fin. That way I can pose them a little bit, give me a little bit of flexibility so they won't be so straight. Now I'll mummify them with blue tape, and there we have 2 humpback whale fin armatures. My lovely wife bought me this authentic Italian professional grade pasta machine for my birthday. And I have to tell you guys, it is the best present a polymer clay artist could ever receive. It works so well. If you work with polymer clay, this is the kind of pasta machine you want to get. Don't get the cheap ones. Go all out and get you a professional grade pasta machine. You will not regret it. Now we'll cover the fin armatures in clay, and we'll see if this works. Now I'll do a test fit to see how they look. They look pretty good so far. Now that we've tested to see that they're the right size and everything fits, we'll go ahead and refine it and add all the details to her fins. If you haven't noticed it yet, you'll see that I have a big bandage on my left thumb there, which made it really hard to sculpt. I didn't realize how much I used my left hand. But anyway, I was working on my air conditioner because it's 1,000 degrees where I live, and I jammed my thumb into the stucco of the house, which proceeded to rip a section of the top of my thumb off, and it smarted, and I said a lot of dirty words that I won't say here. So sculptors, be careful out there. You need your fingers. Now this is something that I was kind of afraid to do. I was drilling till I hit wood inside the whale's armature because I wanted the fins to be connected with glue inside the armature of the whale, because I was afraid if they weren't connected to something structural on the inside that they would just end up breaking off. Now the next part will be blending the fins into the body. And you might notice that I have less of a bandage on my thumb because it's actually getting better. Which is a weird testament because it shows you how long these videos take to make. Because I smashed my thumb in the middle of making this, and by the end of the video my thumb is all healed. It's funny because these videos are kind of like a time capsule. As I watch them, I remember things. Oh yeah, I remember when I was doing this, this was happening, or when I was doing that, this was happening. It's kind of funny. Looks like that one's all done. Now we go on to the other one. And no, I am not going to go through the entire process. We'll just speed it up right here and call both of the fins finished. Now we'll start the process of making her tail. I didn't want any of the polymer clay to be structural. I wanted the armature to be the only thing that the polymer clay was connected to, because polymer clay is non-structural. It will not hold anything up. If you put two pieces of polymer clay together, I can guarantee you they'll break. You want the armature to be the structural part, and you want the polymer clay to just basically be a skin with some detail on it. If you try to make polymer clay structural, you will be disappointed every time. Go ahead and ask me how I know this, because I've made the mistake several times. Okay, that looks like it's working pretty good. Let's go ahead and take it to the whale and do a test fit. Okay, that looks like it's going to work, so let's go ahead and cover it with some aluminum foil and put the first layer of polymer clay over it. What I decided to do is put a really thin layer of polymer clay over the tail armature, then bake it, then put a second layer of polymer clay over it for the details. By doing this, it gave me something sturdy to work under. Here's the second layer that I'm putting on. As you can see, some of it is broken off, but that's okay because we'll fix it with the second layer. And there's the first side completed. Now we have to do the other side. I'll give you the abbreviated version here. But once I get both sides covered in the second layer of clay, then I can start working on the details, like all the little ridges and scratches and scars on the back of the humpback's tail. In fact, marine biologists use all those scratches and scars and scrapes to determine which whale they're looking at, and that's how they identify them, kind of like a fingerprint for their research. Okay, the moment of truth. Now to attach the tail to the armature of the body. Get it all set up, then attach some epoxy sculpt to it, because I guarantee you this tail is not going to fall off. Now we'll wrap it with some polymer clay and blend the tail into the body. I must say, it is so much easier to have both of your thumbs while you're sculpting. As you can see, my thumb has healed up pretty good, and now I can use both of them. It's blending in pretty good here. Just adding in a few more refinements, but I noticed that there was one part missing called the caudal. It's basically a ridge that goes from the hump all the way to the end of the tail on the top part of the humpback's body. And after several weeks of work, this lady humpback is ready to bake. Ah, futz. Dang it. The reality that we all live with polymer clay is the inevitable cracking. Well, at least the tail didn't fall off. Well, sometimes you just gotta laugh. Or cry, laugh, whatever. What can you do? Well, these cracks don't line up too well on her nose, so we're just gonna have to redo the whole thing. The tail, however, lines up pretty good, so we'll just go ahead and put some epoxy sculpt in between those two cracks, and we should be able to smooth it out. And I'm using epoxy sculpt here because I have tried fixing cracks like this with polymer clay, and it usually doesn't work. Now on the nose here, repairs like this usually work out okay. Usually. Foreshadowing, I know. But usually these kind of repairs work well. It does not work here. I will show you that in a few minutes. But like I said, it's just a reality that we live with. Frustrating and even heartbreaking sometimes, but we just continue on. There we go. That's not too bad. That's a good repair. Now we'll go ahead and do the ventral pleat repair. There we go. That's not too bad. Now we carefully cure it with the heat gun. And even after I cured it with the heat gun and repaired it, it's still cracked, and I put some more epoxy sculpt on it, and I just say, futz it, let's just paint this thing and be done with it. And while we're painting, I want to tell you a little story. I would have loved to have been a marine biologist, but something occurred in my childhood that made me angry with the beach and the ocean, and quite frankly, to this day, I'm still quite angry with the beach, although I do love going there, but I just won't go in the water anymore. When I was about 6 years old, I lived in Santa Paula, California, which is about 15 minutes away from the Ventura Beach, and we went there quite often. One day we went to the beach, and I had just got myself a set of a plastic bucket and a sand shovel. And the second that we arrived to the beach, I made a beeline to the sand to make my first sandcastle with my brand new sand bucket and brand new plastic sand shovel. Now, you can't make a sandcastle out of the dry sand. You have to go out there into the wet part of the sand so that you can compact it into your bucket and make your sandcastle. Now, the beach can be somewhat deceiving. The water keeps coming in and out as the waves crash against the sand, and you do have to be mindful of where that water is at all times when you're at the beach. And that really didn't make much difference to me because I had important things to do with my shovel and my bucket. I had to make a sandcastle, so I had to get to the sweet spot of the beach in order to get the best sand to make the best sandcastle. And it was going to be an amazing sandcastle, at least 3 stories in my 6-year-old brain. This thing was going to be awesome. So I filled up my brand new bucket with sand and I started making towers and walls, and I was just having the time of my life. But I should have been paying attention to the water. As I was making one of my towers, my shovel was over to the side and a big wave crashed onto the shore, and the water came up and hit me in the face, and before I knew it, I saw my shovel being sucked out into the surf. I stood up and I wiped the sand and seawater off my face, and I saw my shovel going out into the water, and my immediate 6-year-old brain said, I need to save my shovel. So I started running out into the surf to save my shovel. What my 6-year-old brain didn't remember was that I didn't know how to swim. So I immediately turned around and ran back towards the shore. Then I turned around and I looked way out into the water, and I saw my shovel floating out there, but there was no way that I could get it. And to this day, I am still pissed off at the ocean for stealing my brand new shovel because I never saw it again. Sometimes I still wonder if that little shovel's out there just floating around. I guess I'll never know because the ocean's a pretty big place. Maybe it got swallowed by a whale. Hey everybody, if you've made it this far, you are a rock star and have more tenacity and stamina than I could ever possibly hope to have. And I truly appreciate it. If you think I deserve it, go ahead and give that like button a tap. And if you want to see more of my sculptures, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. And once again, to all my subscribers, I cannot tell you how much I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Everybody take care, and we'll see you next time.